capacity, and we must address that. So where we don't have persons with appropriate financial skills or accounting expertise, we must ensure that the councils of the colleges provide for that. So we are working with each of the institutions and their councils to go through the financial statements and the management letter that we received. We're especially concerned about institutions where we had disclaimers, but I was pleased that actually the number has and is continuing to go down. So the support that we've been providing over time to assist colleges with improving their financial administration is bearing some positive results, but there's work that we need to continue to do. And we will work closely both with the AG's office and his audit team that works with our department, as well as with councils of the TVETs and the principals of the institutions. I am quite very committed to ensuring that we have the appropriate management and administrative capacity so that colleges are able to administer their fiduciary responsibilities. I was fairly shocked and troubled to discover that it was mainly the TVET colleges that retained that upfront funding that we provided in the hope that students would have allowances dispersed to them. And really it was because of poor record management, inability to give us information on registered students, and without that information, NSFAS couldn't then issue the remittance advice and ensure that funding is paid. So there were also failings within NSFAS itself, and that we must be quite frank about, because we were being told, I certainly recall, that when students and university leaders had complained to me for weeks, we thought dispersing upfront payment was addressing the problem, only to discover later that those funds are sitting and they're not moving because the proper processes are not being carried through to conclusion. So we've learned some lessons about monitoring and ensuring that we don't take at face value that a step you take actually addresses the problem that has been identified. Yeah. Yes, Randall.
Thanks, Minister. Di just reminded me that I missed the question. The accountability and steps taken. So in our diagnostics and our risk analysis, we identified the need for forensics, and that is underway. But as I say, our focus is to make sure that we deliver the 2019, and the forensics will take its part, course alongside that.
Thank you. Can I check with Pretoria? Ishmael?
Thanks, Chairperson. We do have a question from Pretoria.
Okay, we'll take it. Thanks. Go ahead.
Naledi Pandor from Jacaranda FM News. I just have 3 questions. One is, when will the processing of applications be done? So when can these students expect to find out if they are getting funding? And can you tell us how many of the students will you be able to fund? And just the 3rd question is there any feedback on former recipients of NSFAS and whether the scheme has been able to get them to pay back what they owe, or are we still struggling on that front? Thank you.
That's all from Pretoria. Back to you, Chairperson.
Thank you, sir. I think we can take.
All right. Well, as I said, the processing is done when, well, firstly we're doing the evaluation checks, as I indicated, and the final decision will, of course, be made once we know that you have passed your national senior certificate, that you are admitted to an approved program, and that you are registered. That's when we are able then to disburse. In terms of numbers, I mentioned the numbers that we anticipate an estimate of around 400,000, 920 for the TVET college sector, and 377,050 for university students. But remember, that these are not just new. There are continuing beneficiaries who, there are students who are already NSFAS recipients who continue to be supported into 2019. What we will be able to provide to you in the new academic year is the number of new beneficiaries that will be supported by the scheme. We are giving you now a global picture of the total number we anticipate will be supported. On the last question, can I hand over to you, Di?
Thank you, Minister. I think the issue of the paying back of current students, past students, NSFAS students, that is continuing, and in fact NSFAS has reported that students are paying back their former loans, and they have not stopped doing that. There are systems in place to encourage people to pay back or pay forward in some way, I suppose, to ensure that new students do get access to that funding. And I think that the department has been quite pleased with that response from the public, because it could have been, given the announcement of providing funding, full funding for new students without a loan scheme, that people wouldn't be paying back. So I think we are pleased with that. I think the administrator could add to that process.
Yes.
So thank you, Di. Yes, students are paying back, and we are engaging like normal debt collection. That hasn't stopped. And it's quite surprising how many people are still willing to contribute back into paying off their debts and be thankful for the support that they receive. So that speaks volumes to the commitment of students. I thought let me just give some statistics. So as we receive applications, we process them almost on a real-time basis. And of the 400, we've already touched 300,000 students. And we have confirmed, well, never confirmed, but 170,000 of them are eligible as we speak. And as soon as we get the admissions data from universities, we'll be able then to match it. And so it's much smoother and much more ready to be much more ready for 2019 than before. So the students can know upfront whether they are indeed funded and for which courses they will be funded. So we're quite pleased with that. Tasneem has got a shift, walking 24-hour shift to process this, and we're really working hard to get students' data processed and communicated back to them.
Okay. All right.
Can we give a last round here in Cape Town? Tama, is there any other hand? So we agree, Tama is the last person. Thank you, Tom.
I just wanted to pick up on the issue that was touched on by the reporter in Pretoria about a potential mismatch between students who apply and are eligible for funding and the number of places at higher education institutions, given that universities, for example, have 5-year enrollment plans, and there's a potential widening of students who could come into the system with the new funding. Do you at this stage have any sense of what the potential mismatch might be between the finite number of places and students applying? And even perhaps a sense of whether there are particular courses that are horribly oversubscribed? Like where are the potential flashpoints, if you like?
Thank you. I think in terms of the enrollment planning at universities, we have approximately 210,000 spaces, just over 210,000 new spaces in the system. And if we look at the statistics that come out of basic education, you will note that that is more than the number of students one would expect to have bachelor's passes. So there are a large number of first-time entry spaces in the system. The number of applicants into universities who would meet the NSFAS means test, in other words, the financial eligibility test, is something else. The data that has been presented by NSFAS thus far and being assessed by NSFAS thus far shows that approximately 30% of the applicants don't meet the means test. So we would expect that if students have applied to universities, have been successful in finding a space, they are likely to be able to come in and be admitted and funded. Of course, there are some areas where we have a large interest, for example, medicine, where we have limited numbers of spaces in the system, and there's very, very high competition for those spaces. But we are also pleased that universities have started alternative processes in terms of creating graduate access into medicine, which enables students who are generally high quality students who've achieved well in their matriculation examinations to do other qualifications in science that are linked into the medical programs, and then they have a second chance of getting into those programs through the graduate program. Obviously, students who are doing exceptionally well at universities are the ones who are going to be competing for those high access qualifications, medicine, actuarial sciences, engineering, etc. And those who do not make it into the institution of their choice, we have asked registrars to refer them back into our central applications clearinghouse system so that we can then provide data back to all universities to check and to offer those young people places that are still available in other programs that they may be interested in.
Thank you. Okay. No, thank you, colleagues. We have come to the end of this press conference. Thank you very much.
My thanks to all of you. I hope you're going to be able to communicate on some of what has been achieved and just give students a sense of comfort that the issues of student funding and administrative processing are being addressed. Thank you very much. Thanks, Longa.
No, that's fine. Because at least